Hello, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another monthly reading wrap-up. It took me a second to figure out what the filming today, probably because my brains are scrambled after having read 52 books this past month. Now, full transparency, I haven't actually gotten to 52 books. I will by the end of today, or tomorrow, Saturday when I'm filming this, but this has by far been my most productive reading month ever. I am kind of proud of the fact that I was able to read 52 books. This is not something that's likely to happen again. However, I'm glad that I did it because of a reading challenge that I am carrying out for the month of July that I will tell you about more in August. I have a lot of things to share with you today, obviously. We're not going to talk about all 52 books, don't you worry, your pretty little head. We're instead going to talk about 16 books that I have talked about either in weekly reading vlogs in passing or I've just never talked about ever. If you want to hear about any of the 33 books that I'm not talking about here in this video, go ahead and check out these videos where I talked about other books in more detail because those were like secret TBR, you know, very lengthy type vlogs. I had a really good reading month overall. I read a lot of 4 and 5 star books and it was game-changing. I think that's maybe why I read so much. I was so excited about most of the things that I was reading that I just wanted to read more and more. Now you might be saying, what, 16 plus 33? Bitch, that's not 52 books, and you would be correct. If you want to hear about the other 3 books that I absolutely adored for the most part, that are not featured in any of the videos that are live on my channel, check out my Patreon because I'm going to be posting a exclusive reading vlog for 3 books that I really enjoyed that are like KU specific. You know, I do that every month. They're on Patreon, exclusive reading vlog on my $10 tier, so, you know, shameless plug, as one always does. But you know what? Today we're here to talk about 16 books. I am going to give you a bit of a disclaimer here. If you do not want to hear me rant and rave, mostly rant, I wouldn't stay tuned because most of the books I'm going to be talking about are 2-star reads. I know I said I had a good reading month, and I did, but a lot of those good books were featured in KU reading vlogs or other, like, you know, lengthy type vlogs, and we're not talking about those books here today. We're going to talk about some stuff I honestly pretty much hated, so grab yourself a beverage and let's hop into it. So the first book that I finished this month was My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey, which I unfortunately gave 2 stars to. I know what you're thinking, but Chandler, you love Tessa Bailey. But Chandler, you give all of her books 5 stars. That's not actually true. The first book I ever read by Tessa Bailey, I gave 2 stars, and this one, while not very reminiscent of that first book that I read by her, was just also a fail for me as well. So My Killer Vacation is about Miles and Taylor. Miles is our hero, Taylor is our heroine. Our heroine, she's on a summer vacation, I want to say in Cape Cod, and she is living her best life until she finds a dead body. Oh shit, what's going on? It's the guy who owns the Airbnb she's staying in. Now she's determined to figure out what the hell happened to this man, and Miles is called in because he is like a detective, private investigator or something. The guy who died, his sister, hired Miles, and so Miles and Taylor sort of team up, I guess you could say, throughout the story to find out what's happening to the dude. I mean, I guess he's dead, so we know what happened to him. But, you know, solve whodunit. The premise of that is exciting. The premise of that is exactly what I want. It's giving me cozy mystery, it's giving me mystery thriller, it's giving me suspenseful romance. The execution, however, was not it. The mystery thriller aspect was just lackluster. I don't need to go into detail about why it kind of sucked. It just was not very good, and that was a disappointment in and of itself. My big issue really is Miles and Taylor's relationship. Now look here. Look here, in my eyes, okay? I like smut, okay? I do. I certainly do. What I don't like is unjustified smut. Smut between 2 characters, sexual chemistry between 2 characters who have no business having sex. And I felt that way between Miles and Taylor. I did not find him charming. I found him to be described as sort of like a greasy old man, even though he's like 35, I think, and Taylor's like 20. Like, they're not, the age gap is not there. It's not very big. He's always in his head talking about like how he's too old for her and she's naive and she's stupid, but I'm gonna steal her panties and put them in my pocket anyway. It didn't really have the appeal that I wanted it to have, and it made me rethink a lot of my like love for Tessa Bailey. I'm like, are all of her books like this? Am I just overlooking the fact that like all of the dudes in her books are kind of like gross? And I don't think that's true. And if it is true, I do think that it's usually balanced, right? Like, it's not just a sexual attraction there, he's actually attracted to like her personality and stuff, like Piper and Brendan. He likes that she's a dumb bitch, okay? He likes that she likes stuff. He likes buying her things and likes that relationship. This one I don't think really had a foundation. I don't feel like Miles and Taylor had the relationship or the chemistry that I wanted them to have, and the ending of this book I thought was weird. I didn't really love Miles's approach to like in Taylor back. I'm gonna leave it there, okay? It was a 2-star read. I'm disappointed in it. I'm glad that I do not own a physical copy. I swiftly deleted that off of my wish list. I'm collecting a wish list right now because I'm not buying any physical books, but I am adding things that I have enjoyed, right? And for some reason I preemptively put My Killer Vacation on that list, and it was deleted, okay? Moving on to a book that I gave 1 star to. Now, in the past, I really have not been very generous with my 1-star ratings. Like, I have not been giving out 1 stars. To me, it's rare that a book is deserving of 1 star. This novella, however, I just didn't like. Like, there was nothing there. A 2-star read is like, okay, like, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever read, but like, it wasn't great. 1 star, pretty bad, okay? Magic in the Wind by Christine Feehan. It's a novella in this series, right? It's like the first book or the first novella in the series, introducing us to these like witchy sisters, right? We have Sarah and Damon. Damon comes to town, this small town, and he becomes enthralled by Sarah. Sarah is this like witchy, interesting person, but nothing fucking happens. Like, I was reading an abridged version, or I was reading like the Sparks notes to a romance. It was bizarre, and it's been a second since I've read this because I've read 52 books this fucking month, and I really can't recall the fine details of this particular novella, except for I disliked it, and I am greatly excited to unhaul it. Next up, we have The Wedding Crasher, which I gave 2 stars to. This book is about Solange and Dean, and the premise of this one was really cute. I really enjoyed The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. I expected to like this one just as much, but unfortunately, I just didn't really feel the chemistry between our 2 main characters. So, at the beginning of the story, Dean is getting married. He is, like, on his wedding day, about to walk down the aisle, or I guess his bride's gonna walk down the aisle to him, and Solange finds the bride talking to, I think, one of the groomsmen, or just, like, one of her friends, and she's like, you know, I've always loved you, I've always wanted to be with you, blah blah blah. Solange is like, oh fuck, like, I don't want Dean, the groom, to marry this woman. Like, I've heard things that I can't unhear, right? Solange, I don't think, is in the wedding industry. She's just helping out her cousin or her sister, I don't really remember, the main character of the last book. She essentially prevents this wedding from happening, and for some reason Dean and Solange decide to keep in touch afterwards. Dean is somewhat grateful, I guess, that Solange like called off this wedding, but the reason he was marrying this girl in the first place was because he wanted to like look good at his law firm. Like, he wasn't gonna get promoted unless he had a family life or like was relatable in some way, I guess. As if being a human being with like interests is not relatable enough, he needs to be married. Solange and Dean decide to fake date. He is like, hey, since you called off my wedding, that I was fine with, like, I didn't really care if it was an open relationship or not, you sort of fucked things up for me, you're gonna fake date me. And she's like, you know what, okay, sure, I think you're kind of hot, I kind of like you, let's do this. There were some scenes that I found cute, there were some scenes that I found fun, I did feel the sexual chemistry there, but the relationship development was just not, it's not something I was super into. I got kind of bored midway through this book. I could not for the life of you, geez, I don't want to put that on you, I can't for the life of me remember how this book ended, and I feel bad about it because I have to talk about it in this here wrap up, but it just was not, it was not everything that I wanted it to be and more. Next up, the 4th book that I read this month. I mean, it wasn't technically the 4th book, but it's the 4th book on my list for this here video. The League of Gentlewomen Witches, which I gave 2 stars to. I didn't enjoy it, like I didn't enjoy most of the books on this list for this video. This is about Alex and Charlotte, and the overall premise of the story I really liked, I really thought was interesting. We have a society of witches, we have a society of pirates, and we have like another society of witches. I think it's like lady scoundrels. At the start of the story, Charlotte is on the look for this amulet because she's heard that it's loose in the wild and that it like rightfully belongs to her, I guess. So she decides she's gonna go hunt after it, and she comes into contact with a man named Alex who's also after the same amulet. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? They embark to find it together, but they're also kind of competing to find it, and also they're having a lot of sex, and also I'm supposed to like somehow root for this relationship and or care about them. That just never ended up happening. They have a lot of sex. I think we're supposed to believe that they have this like off the charts chemistry and that this relationship just is fated to happen. But I didn't feel that way. Charlotte's head, a lot of the time when they're having sex, she's like, wow, this is quite a delight. I could never settle down with this man though. He's a pirate, you know, he has a flying house. I could never. And it just was not convincing. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun. It felt like this world, in my opinion, was a little too whimsical for me. It didn't have a lot of like basis. I was gonna say basis in reality. If it's whimsical, of course it's not gonna have basis in reality. I wish that this world, that this magical world had more rules and that it made more sense. It was not really laid out before me how this shit worked, and we just have flying houses appear. We just have women flying on broomsticks, which I mean, I guess like that's witchy, we get that. But if you're gonna have fantasy romance, let's include the fantasy elements in a way that makes sense and not just like throw shit at the reader and expect them to care. But I didn't care, and I gave this book 2 stars. I'm doing an absolutely dog shit job at telling you what these books are about. I'm gonna chalk it up to hunger, but you know what? I'm gonna persist. Next up, The Sizzle Paradox, which I also gave 2 stars to. This one's about Lyric and Kian. I'm gonna go with Kian. Our heroine is in STEM. As I'm sure you could probably tell from the Sizzle Paradox, it honestly sounds like the title of an Allie Hazelwood book. Lyric is studying sexual chemistry in like long-term romantic partners and seeing what makes romantic relationships stick. Like what is going to make for a successful long-term relationship. And to do this, like not only is she getting her PhD for this, I guess you could say, this is her research, she's also doing some experiments of her own by dating random guys, kissing them, trying to engage in some sort of sexual relationships. But the thing is, Lyric's a fucking weirdo. weirdo, okay? She's bizarre. And I can best sum this up by saying she lives with her best friend named Kian. They're apparently inseparable. They know everything about each other. They've lived together for a few years. They're besties, okay, right? So they go to Target together, you know, very domestic things. He becomes the love interest. I think that's pretty safe to say and not really spoil the book, right? Okay. They go to Target together, and some random fucking dude just looks at her and thinks she's beautiful and comes up to her and is like, hey, wanna go on a date with me sometime? And she's like, sure. And he's like, what about right now? I am here with a friend, but I am, in fact, gonna ditch him to go get froyo with this stranger, with a complete fucking stranger. I feel like that's all you really need to know, right? It's weird. It's a weird book. The beginning half of the story, she is trying to figure out why none of her relationships or why none of the guys she date really appeal to her, and obviously she finds out that it's because Kian has been there the whole time and like he knows her so well and no other man could possibly know her, and so that's why her dating life is unsuccessful. Also, she's fucking weird, so that's really, let's get down to it. That's why her relationships are unsuccessful. I liked the idea of her research. I wanted that to be more of a component of the story. It's really just her being very immature. It is her not actually doing the research for her PhD. It's like her advisor or whatever is like, bitch, are you gonna do your fucking research? Like, you're technically spending money to be here, or you actually don't know. I don't know how PhDs work, but he's like, you know, I'm trying to help you out, girl, but like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And she's like, I just can't figure it out. I don't know. I didn't like this. I thought the romance was pretty weak as well. This is the second book by Sandhya Menon, like her second adult romance novel, and I just didn't enjoy it. So I think after having had two very unsuccessful romances, can safely say that I don't think this author's for me. I just find her heroines to be pretty insufferable. I've never liked a heroine that she's written, whether that's YA or adult. So I think I'm safe saying at this point, regardless of a list video in the future, like, will not be reading her books, okay? You know, I found things out about myself through this journey. So I'm feeling satisfied, I guess. I'm trying to make myself feel better about the fact that I willingly read this entire book, but nothing's really making me feel better. Did I say I was talking about 16 books? Technically 18, okay? I threw a trilogy in here and I'm just going to talk about them all at once. I read, kind of randomly, Ruined, Avenged, and Allied by Amy Tantera. This is a YA fantasy series that I owned all of because I got them on a steep discount way back in the day, okay? This book series is about our main character, Emelina, and she lives in the rival country to Prince Casimir. Prince Casimir is like, I don't want to say the head honcho. He's definitely like beholden to his dad. He is someone who is not in a lot of control of his life, and so he gets married off to a woman of a rival country. Now, this woman is not actually Emelina. Emelina decides to pretend to be the person that Prince Cass is supposed to marry so that she can get insider information into Prince Cass. And the country that Emelina is from, called Ruina or something like that, there are ruined people there, and the ruined people are magical. Magic's kind of like outlawed in this like world, I guess you could say, and so we put all of the magical people in Ruina, and they're kind of suffering there. They're not having the best time ever. Emelina, now that her sister Olivia has been taken by Prince Cass's family, decides that she's going to pose as the princess from another country and marry Prince Cass, you know, to get insider information and to somehow maybe get her sister Olivia back, okay? And that's what the trilogy is about. The first book is kind of about the marriage, and at the very end, Prince Cass finds out that Emelina is not who she says she is. The second book, I think they spend most of the time apart, and then in the third book, they come back together and kind of like work on things together. I liked the premise of the series. I did think it was interesting. It was very palatable. I thought it was a fairly enjoyable read. I did like the sibling dynamics here because Olivia, we're not really given insight into her character until like the second book. We're just like trying to get her, I guess, like to get her out of being, you know, held prisoner in the first book. And when we actually get to know her personality, we're like, okay, did we actually want to get her? Do we want her back? I don't know. And we have to see Olivia and Emelina kind of like fight over how they think the country should be ruled and what the like best order of events and like what should happen next, I guess. Should they try to kill Prince Cass? Should they run the country together? Like, there's a lot of things that take place that I thought were interesting and that I'd never seen done before in a YA fantasy, especially fantasy romance. I also found like the romance component here surprisingly, I don't want to say well developed, but it was surprisingly at the forefront of the story, which I thought was fun. This is not something that I thought was maybe the best. I do think the second book was quite boring, and I don't think the third book was like the best wrap up to a series ever. It was entertaining enough to keep me entertained and to keep me picking up the books. After I read the first one, I told myself, like, you know, if you don't like this one, you don't have to continue on with the series, you can just unhaul it. But they were entertaining enough to where I decided to like listen to the audiobooks for all three. Would I recommend? I don't know. I think if you like YA fantasy and you're not looking for something game changing, but you want a fantasy with a romance, you like sister dynamics, I actually think this is like maybe worth a try. I kind of enjoyed it. The first book I think I gave 3 stars, second book 2 stars, third book 3 stars, I can't remember. Overall, it was like a 3-star series for me. Next up, back to the romance. I think all all of these next ones are romance. I'm looking, they're all romance. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? The next book that I read was Electric Idol by Katie Robert, and this is the book, again, that really helped me find out things about myself, and that thing was that I don't really like Katie Robert books, and I kind of knew this. I've tried other books by her in the past. They've all kind of failed for me, but this was like my last-ditch attempt at really enjoying her stuff, and I had to read this book for a list video, so I was like, you know, in it either way. The book is about Psyche and Eros. I don't know much about Greek mythology, so I don't know if they actually end up together in like Greek myth, but Psyche at the beginning of this story she has a hit out on her, I guess, right? Eros is supposed to murder her. After some like interactions between the two of them, they discover that they have this intense sexual chemistry. Eros decides he doesn't really want to kill Psyche, and the only solution to not killing her, because his mom is the one that like put the hit out on Psyche, the only solution is to marry her instead. So this is a marriage of convenience, fake relationship sort of story, and I liked parts of it. This was very basic and very boring, but it was fine. Like, I enjoyed the sexual component. I liked that Psyche was like an influencer. I liked her relationship dynamic with her sisters. I thought she was like a fairly fun heroine. And I also liked Eros. He was kind of this like damaged hero who has to do his mom's bidding, and he has to kill a lot of people even though he doesn't really want to kill people. And I think he calls himself a sociopath, but like he considers himself to be like different than everybody else. I liked them individually as characters. I just didn't feel the romance or the plot to be very interesting. It wasn't anything that I was like, oh wow, this is different, or how these two are like picture perfect puzzle pieces, like they should be my number one OTP. I just didn't get that vibe from this book. To me, nothing about Greek mythology retellings is really doing it for me. I've wanted to really find a Hades and Persephone retelling that works for me, and I haven't found that. This book, I think maybe a little bit more than the first book in the series, but like not much more. Just okay. I don't know. I don't really have any desire to read the next book in the series. Will I be forced to read it for a list video or for like the Goodreads Choice Words next year? You know, most likely. I discovered that Katie Roberts stuff just like doesn't historically work for me, and I'm okay with that. Like, it is what it is. 2 stars. Moving on. Next up. Oh boy. Okay, I didn't write down the character names for this book, and I kind of regret it because they were interesting. I think one of the characters is named Tanith. Okay. A Letter to Three Witches is a book that I gave 1 star to. Again, I told you I'm not very generous with my 1 stars. I kind of default to 2 stars if I didn't enjoy a book. But this book was so bad that I had to give it 1 star. I don't remember the names of our main characters, but the villain of the story is named Tanith. And Tanith, at the beginning of the story, I think she's like the adoptive sister to our heroine. Like, hey, heroine and 2 cousins. I stole one of your men, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I stole one of your men and I'm out of town. I'm leaving. And so the 3 cousins are left to figure out which of their men is going to be taken by Tanith. Is it going to be like the cheating husband of one of these people? Is it going to be the boyfriend who's like out of town? Is it going to be the boyfriend who's in town? Who is it going to be? Who is Tanith taken? That's kind of the gist of the story. It's bizarre. Like, it wasn't a very interesting book. Oh, and then there's the family curse aspect, which I really hated. Okay, so Tanith and like all of her cousins, siblings, whatever, they're not allowed to use magic, and Tanith is using magic, I guess, to like get this guy on her side. And I guess that's like part of the plot line, is that magic exists in this world, but this particular family is banned from using magic because they used magic a long time ago and it was bad. There's also like a kooky aunt who has been cursed, and she is like taken from her one true love. It was so chaotic, so all over the place. The romantic thread here was weird too. The heroine of the story, like, her only plotline really is like, no, I really like this guy and I really want to cheat on my boyfriend. Wouldn't it be like awesome if Tanith actually took my boyfriend, because then I wouldn't have to feel guilty about the fact that I'm cheating on him? If what I'm saying is making no sense, it's because this book didn't make any fucking sense, okay? I didn't enjoy this book. I'd never heard of this author before. I didn't have like super high hopes going into this. I was kind of thinking like, oh, maybe this will be a witchy romance that I actually like, and that was not the case, okay? So I give this book 1 star. The 9th book that I read this month, okay? Under One Roof by Ellie Hazelwood. This is the last of the novellas that I needed to read to have read all of them, okay? This is the first one in the series. It's about our heroine, Mara, and our hero, Liam. She is an environmentalist. Environmental science, I think, was her degree. And Liam is a big, bad oil lawyer. And they live together under one roof because our heroine, Mara, I think is like given half of this house. I think, like, she knows this old person, this old lady who passes away and like leaves her part of the house, but guess who else is left part of the house? It's Liam. So they decide begrudgingly to live together, and for a lot of the time at the very beginning of the book, living together, they like don't talk at all, and then they come to this reluctant truce, and then they get to know each other and their habits, and they fall for each other. I did find that this story worked in the format that it was presented in. I didn't hate the relationship between Liam and Mara. I just didn't find it very convincing because I didn't actually get to see much of their relationship work out before the romantic romantic relationship, if that makes sense. Like, I wanted to see more of these domestic moments. I wanted to see them slowly over time grow from like completely hating each other and avoiding each other to being like reluctantly at this truce where they do get along and like they do, I don't know, help each other a little bit, or like are polite to each other when they live together. That never really happened in a way that I found satisfactory. And it makes sense because this is a novella length story. It made for a weird reading experience. I didn't feel like the flashbacks worked very well in the story either. It just wasn't my favorite of the novellas. I think I gave this one 3 stars. It's not the worst thing I've read ever, but it's very, very, very unmemorable. I would say if you want to read any of the feminist novellas, I highly recommend the 3rd one. It's my favorite. The 2nd one sucks. The 1st one's okay, but really just read the 3rd one. I thought it was great. I like the hero in that one a lot, so anyway, I'm glad that I've completed the feminist novellas. I am now less excited, I guess, to read the full-length novel. I think that's coming out in like August or something like that, but I'll be reading it, you know, as one does for the content. The beige content. Next up at number 10, we have Count Your Lucky Stars by Alexandra Bellefleur. This is a sapphic novel about Margot and Olivia. Margot, I believe, is a app creator. She's really into astrology, and that's her job. She does astrology shit. Olivia is a wedding planner, and she used to be in a semi-relationship with Margot in high school, okay? Back in the day, they had like this 2-week, really intense romantic entanglement, okay? They were friends before that, but then one of them I think is sick, and then they just like hang out for 2 weeks and they fuck, and you know, it's a delight until Olivia decides that she is going to be back with her boyfriend afterwards. It's a bit of a miscommunication trope for sure, but she gets back with her boyfriend, and then Margot and Olivia kind of never talk again until they're brought together when Margot's best friend is getting married at the place that Olivia works. So the two, after a series of events, end up living together and entering into a relationship together. It's kind of sexual in nature at first, and then it turns into something more. I liked parts of the story, but I felt like the 3rd act conflict was really, really grating, and I also felt like because these two had built-in history, there wasn't a lot of time spent in the present day developing a relationship between the two women. That's not to say there was no relationship development. There was sex. We do see them work through some of their personal issues together, but I think my issue here was that I wanted to know more about what would make them work together in a long-term relationship. Like, yes, we understand that when you guys were 18, you had a lot of like hot, steamy sex. That's awesome. I get that you know that she likes bagels. That's really cool too. In the present day, like, what about y'all works? You know, y'all have different careers, you have different interests, so what about you is going to work? And I never really felt like I got that. I didn't hate this book. I feel like I'm nitpicking a little bit too much. I did appreciate things about the story. I did appreciate the level of steam in this book. I think oftentimes in female-female romances, the steam can be a little bit lacking. It definitely was not lacking here, but I just wanted a little bit more from the romance. I've yet to find a sapphic romance where I was just like, holy shit, they are puzzle pieces. They should be together forever. Say that. Actually, I think Party Favors by Erin McClellan kind of did that for me this month. Go watch my reading subscriber favorite KU video, which I'll link in the description if you want to hear my thoughts and feelings on that book. I think actually that one, in terms of the sexual component, very similar. I actually feel like even though that one was like kind of a novella, it did the relationship dynamic stuff better than this book, even though this book had more time to do it. So 3 stars. It wasn't bad. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend this if you're looking for a sapphic story, because I do feel like it was cute, it was slice of life, and it was something that like would be totally easy listening on the beach, or like, I guess, reading with your, you know, physical eyes on the beach, but it wasn't my favorite. So next up, book number 11 is a book that I actually enjoyed and I gave 4 stars to. It's the only 4-star on this list. Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. Now, I'd heard so many good things before picking up this book, especially by Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life, so I was really expecting a lot, and I think that kind of unfairly set my expectations of this book, which is why I'm a little disappointed to be giving it 4 stars and not 5 stars, but I did really enjoy the story, and let's talk about it, okay? So this book is about our main character, Viola, and she, at the start of the story, is just living her life. She is a lady's companion, and she has reinvented herself and really come into her true identity after the Battle of Waterloo. She is presumed dead and is able to live her most authentic self, right? And there are some unintended repercussions of this. Her best friend, the Duke of Gracewood, thinks that she is dead and is kind of struggling. So whenever Viola's sister-in-law hears that the Duke of Gracewood isn't doing very well, she decides to take it upon herself to go and visit him. So Viola and her sister-in-law, they go to the Duke of Gracewood and they decide to give him comfort and try to kind of get him out of his shell, especially since his younger sister needs to debut into society. Who better to help with that than Viola? And Viola's sister-in-law is married to the Duke, who is Viola's brother. It is this delightful push and pull and kind of hidden identity situation, because Viola obviously deeply knows the Duke of Gracewood. They used to be best friends, and yet she doesn't want to reveal, you know, their former friendship because she is living her life and wants to continue living her life as she is. The Duke of Gracewood does eventually kind of figure out that Viola is his former best friend. It stirs up a lot of emotions in the both of them, and I think the story is really about them kind of like coming to terms with where things are now, having to kind of like live through some of the grief that the Duke of Gracewood was living through, yet also realizing like, hey, my best friend is right here, and she's really hot, and I like also want to sleep with her. I loved the nature of the story. I loved that the secret identity here made a lot of sense. I liked the way it was unveiled. I liked that the Duke never had any ill will towards Viola. He like was never angry about the situation, was never a dick, which I really appreciated. Like, he has every right, I think, to be angry that his best friend never came forward and was like, hey, like, I'm alive. Just, I liked the way that was handled. I think my issue with the story was that it was just too long. Frankly, like, there were so many moments when either the Duke or Viola were like in their heads just thinking about their emotions and thinking about things that were said and like rehashing conversations that we had already seen on page, and it was just a little frustrating. I was like, okay, let's move the momentum forward a little bit. And I also found sometimes that Viola's reactions were a little bit tricky for me. Like, I didn't fully understand where she was coming from at times. When the Duke of Gracewood was just so accepting and was so like, okay, you're my best friend, you're beautiful, I want to have sex with you, let's get married, she really was like not into the idea at first. And I understand like sometimes you have to sit with decisions and sit with ideas. A lot of her like reactions and emotions were justified. Like, they didn't really make sense. They felt like they were kind of coming out of nowhere at points, and maybe that's just me not understanding. Like, that could definitely be on me, but it was just frustrating sometimes, like having so many conflicts and like so many things keeping these people apart that obviously really wanted to be together, that I was like, okay, come on guys, like let's get together. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I love seeing a historical romance with a trans heroine. I think if you like historical romance, I'd recommend picking this up. If you're not really a historical romance person, I don't know that this is like the best book for you, because it is kind of a slow moving plot line, but I enjoyed it, and no, definitely a fun read. The next book that I read is not a fun read for so many different reasons. We have A Brush with Love, which I gave 2 stars to. The first reason this book is not fun is because this is a dental romance. Our heroine is in dental school. She is applying for like an oral maxillofacial surgery internship. I don't know how it works. Residency. She is basically a dentist at this point. In the next year, she wants to like go and get this training to be a surgeon. And she's really into dentistry. She's also really anxious, and she's kind of like not in the market to date. However, we have Dan come into the picture. Dan is a reluctant first-year dentistry student. Harper kind of reluctantly helps him. They do strike up a bit of a romance. There's a lot of sexual chemistry there. They definitely are really into each other. There's definitely good, I would say, mental health rep. There is also representation of like abusive parental relationships, emotionally abusive parental relationships. So if that is triggering to you, maybe don't pick this book up. I think my issue here was that like I did not feel the romance. I felt like both characters were just extremely awkward. And you know what? There are extremely awkward people in real life. They deserve love too. I get that. But it just was not a very fun read. And I can't entirely chalk that up to the fact that this was set in like a dental school, but that definitely didn't help things. This was just honestly a pretty forgettable romance. It was not a favorite, and I wasn't expecting that much from it, so I'm not like upset about it, but it was 2 stars. Except a book that doesn't have anything to do with basketball, yet has basketballs on the cover, and is called Getting His Game Back, is a book that I gave 3 stars to, actually. And this book is about Khalil and Vanessa, and at the start of the story, Vanessa is out with a group of friends lamenting the fact that guys suck, especially white men in particular. She is a black woman, and she is really like wanting to find like a long-term partner. She's a bad bitch, right? She's like in a STEM field. I want to say she like owns her own business and is a software engineer, so she's like, she's awesome. She's really cool. So she definitely does like want love, but she's not really finding it. Historically, she just has not had very good luck with men, until one day she meets Khalil. I think she meets Khalil at his barber shop. He is a barber. He owns a barber shop with his best friend, which is like a plot line that kind of comes in later. He's named Khalil. She signs up for this appointment. She thinks that Khalil's going to be black. He is not. He is white. She develops like an instant chemistry with him, and she's having to kind of struggle with the fact that there's this white guy. He's attractive. I like him, but like, is he going to fetishize me? Is he going to be weird? Like, I don't know how I'm feeling about this. And Khalil is dealing big time with mental health issues. He has, I don't know like the exact terminology for what he's dealing with. I know he has depression, which is definitely there. He has seasonal affective disorder. He might have anxiety and OCD. I don't know. He has a lot of stuff going on. And at the start of the story, he's trying to get his game back, right? He has had a failed relationship that is leaving him a little bit like self-conscious, I guess, and he is also dealing with his mental health. So he's like really into Vanessa, but he's not really sure how to like approach a relationship with her. He's not really sure, you know, how to put the moves on her. He's just like, he's not feeling very confident. He's not feeling like himself, when historically he has been a little bit of a player and like, you know, gotten all the ladies. So we've got Vanessa, who's dealing with her feelings about the fact that she likes a guy who's not black, and she's not sure how this is going to work out in the long term. And then we also have Khalil, who's dealing with like these intense mental health issues, but is also really attracted to Vanessa. And the story really is about them kind of working through their issues and getting together. This one is so tricky for me to talk about, and also so tricky for me to like articulate what I liked and didn't like about. I really enjoyed the mental health representation. It was really intense seeing Khalil deal with the things that he's dealing with, but I feel like it's rare to see mental health handled in a romance, especially when it comes to in a man. Really felt like it was authentic, it was intense, it was sad to read about for sure, but I really did appreciate Khalil and some of like the backsliding he does, but also the progress he makes in kind of healing his mental health. I thought it was really accurate representation and really interesting to read about. Also really liked Vanessa and the way that she was so accepting of Khalil's mental health, and also was able to like set really healthy boundaries and was able to like get what she wanted out of the relationship in a way that like was productive. I don't know, I liked their romance. I thought it was really steamy. I really enjoyed like the steamy moments between them. I think the reason this isn't getting like 5 stars for me is because I wanted just a little bit more relationship development. We have Khalil and Vanessa like sleeping together, and at the beginning of the book there's like a very long period of them like meeting up every once in a while and like going on like a couple of dates sort of, or like, I don't know, not even true dates. He's like, hey, come to this like festival or whatever, and she comes. It felt a little bit like long and drawn out or whatever, and then we have them sleeping together, and I wish that that time at the beginning of the book had been spent with them like truly dating and like truly having more one-on-one time. It felt like our characters were in their heads a lot. We had a lot of like internal dialogue, and it was something that like I wanted more on page. I wanted more interactions between the two of them because the sex was hot, and I did like the individual journeys of the characters. I just felt like the romance could have used a little bit more. So tough one, because I'm really glad this book exists. I really like the characters. I just didn't love the romance. So this one was a 3-star for me, and it actually reminds me of, I think, the last book I'm going to be talking about in a lot of ways, and we'll get into that in a second. But I liked this book. I actually, didn't know what to expect. This wasn't really on my radar until I saw that I needed to read it for a list video, and I'm glad I picked it up. Though don't be fooled by the cover. This has nothing to do with basketball. Only 3 books left to go. First up, we have Something Wilder, which I gave 2 stars to. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? This is a Christina Lauren book, and it was pitched to me as this adventure novel. Don't expect romance, it's gonna be adventure, and that's what I went in expecting. I didn't get anything from this book, I'll be honest. This story is about Lily and Leo. At the beginning of the story, we see them in this kind of like whirlwind romance. They are, I want to say, like working on Lily's father's ranch together, and she dreams of owning this ranch one day. Her dad is like begrudgingly the owner of this ranch. He doesn't really like it. It's been in their family for a while, and all he wants to do is treasure hunt. That's kind of all he's interested in. He's not really into horses. He doesn't care about the ranch. Years later, we fast forward. Lily and Leo are no longer together, and we have Lily, who is leading tours through the desert on horseback. She is not working on the family ranch, and we don't really know why that is. We do find out through the course of the story, obviously, but she is just not happy. She's not having a good time, and she's also doubly not having a good time because Leo, who she is estranged from, is actually one of the guys that she's going to have to take on one of these like tours through the desert. And these tours are usually for people who are inexperienced with horseback and inexperienced with like trail riding in general. So it's Leo and his like goofy ass friends, and she's not having a good time. Her best friend is also with her on the trail, and she is also helping them get through this, her friend Nicole. The story kind of starts evolving when we figure out that Duke, Lily's dad, left behind a journal that has instructions on how to find the treasure. Her dad is deceased and left behind, these instructions on how to get to this treasure. And Lily's like, I don't want to fucking do this because this is what my dad was obsessed with my entire life. It really like put a wedge between us and our relationship, right? But she does end up embarking on this journey to find this hidden treasure with Leo. Some of the other people are involved in the story as well, like with the treasure hunting, but it all kind of comes to a head when Lily and Leo are set out on their own and go find this treasure together. Now, my issue with this book was that the adventure plotline of the story doesn't really happen until like the 70% mark of this book. Like, we know what we're going to do. We know what we're setting off to do. I want to say at like the 20 or 30% mark, but between then and the 70% mark, it's just a lot of people getting injured and a lot of people just like bitching at each other, and it's not exciting. There's not like clues to be found or things like that until the 70% mark. The clues, when they did come out, I thought were so fun and so interesting, and I wanted more of that in the story. Like, I was fine with it not being a romance. But then other things came in, and it fucked the book up, okay? Lily and Leo, there's no relationship development here. He claims that he's been in love with her this entire time, even though they've been separated for like 12 years. And they just fuck, like, a lot. And it's actually on page. It's not a closed-door romance. We get a couple of on-page sex scenes that come out of seemingly nowhere. Oh my god, it's raining, and there's like some tension, or like I'm mad at you, and we're just gonna have sex. We're just gonna have sex outdoors. Actually, I think they have sex in his tent, but I didn't want the sex scenes because I didn't care about the relationship, because there was no relationship development. Say it with me. I don't care about the smut unless there's a relationship to back it up. In my opinion, there was no relationship to back up what was happening here. This was just not, it's not it for me. Again, I think like, if we had gotten rid of the sex scenes, you know, gotten more relationship development, we had gotten more in the way of like clues and stuff throughout the story, this could have easily been a 5-star read for me. It was summary, it was fun in some ways, but it left a little bit to be desired when it came to, again, the adventure plot or the romance. It was like, you know, you're not doing either very well. What's the point? Moving on to another 2-star read. Are we shocked? By the Book by Jasmine Guillory is the book that I gave 2 stars to. I didn't expect to like this book. I did read that it was a closed-door romance, which I know I just said that I don't really like smut unless there's a romance to back it up. I need smut, okay? I need a little bit, like one sex scene. Nothing crazy, but I need some sex. This book is about Isabel and Beau. Isabel, at the beginning of the story, is getting her dream job, kind of, as a assistant, I think, at like a literary agency or a publishing company. I don't actually know what her job is. I didn't really care that much. She actually like lost out on her dream job at her dream company, but she got a very good one instead. And unfortunately, the job actually kind of sucks. She kind of hates her life. We get like flash forwarded a couple of years, and she is just really struggling and not having a good time. And her boss is like, hey, I know you've been emailing this one guy who's supposed to be writing his own like memoir for a long time. He's still not writing it. I'm gonna need you to go to his house in LA, knock on the door, and be like, hey, I need you to write the story of your life. And Beau, our hero, I want to say like a former child star or something, and he refuses to hire a ghostwriter. He wants to write this himself, and yet he's not responding to anyone's emails, and like, he's not submitting any pages, whatever. And so Isabel goes to Beau's house and is like, hey, you need to write this story. She's like, if I have to pep talk you, I'll pep talk you. And he's like, okay, you will pep talk me. You're gonna stay at my house and pep talk me every morning so I can write. And so she stays with him for like a month or two. It's kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I think. This is like a Disney property or whatever, like a adult romance retelling of Disney's intellectual property, and this is supposed to be Beauty and the Beast. It was not good. Beau as a character is completely flat. He has no personality except being grumpy, and Isabel is kind of just pitiful, I'm gonna be honest with you. I know that she's put in some sort of like difficult situations, but I didn't find her a very like likable or rootable heroine. I didn't want to root for her, okay? Like, she just wasn't someone I was like, oh, you go girl, be mean to this man. I just didn't care. I really didn't care at the end of the day, which is upsetting because I wanted to care. I wouldn't say I expected like a whole lot going into this book, but I was kind of hoping that Jasmine Guillory writing an adult romance that wasn't in her like Wedding Day series, like I would enjoy it more. I've just been waiting for her to write stuff that's not in that series and like seeing if that would be different. And I guess this was different than her Wedding Date series. Guillory tends to rely on the sex scenes as relationship development in her stories, so not having a book with sex scenes, I think it made it difficult for this romance to really work. Now, number 16, okay? My neck's starting to hurt from kind of sitting at a weird angle, so I'm ready to be done with this here wrap up. I read Bet on It. I actually really liked this book. I gave it 3 stars. Our main characters, Asia and Walker, and they are living in a small town. Walker grew up in this small town. Asia decided to move there because she was just looking for a change of pace. She wanted to live somewhere that felt a little bit more secure, that maybe would not be as anxiety inducing. She has really bad panic attacks and really bad anxiety. I don't exactly remember what her job is, to be honest. It doesn't really seem to play much of a part in the story. And Walker is back in his hometown because he is, I think, like visiting his grandma, helping his grandma out. I think he lives in like, I don't know, whatever the big city in South Carolina is. They end up meeting actually because Asia goes to bingo nights. She just decides that that's going to be like the way that she meets people, and it like calms her brain a little bit. So she's been going to bingo nights, and Walker starts going to bingo nights with his grandmother, and they develop this like instant sexual chemistry, sexual tension, and they start going on dates together and also having like incredibly intense sex frequently on page. I liked this book. This one actually reminded me a lot of Getting His Game Back, in that we have a hero who has bad mental health, we have a heroine who has bad mental health, that kind of being the emphasis of the story. And I think that's why this book didn't get like more stars for me. This particular one focused so much on the mental health that it made it to where the characters didn't feel maybe very individual, especially when it came to Asia. Like, she had panic attacks, she had anxiety, but like I can't remember her job. I don't really know what her interests are, except for that she's like dealing with this stuff. She does make friends throughout the course of the story, which I thought was nice, like her kind of finding her groove and like finding her rhythm and finding people that really like and accept her. But we also have a lot of emphasis too on like Walker's past and on his trauma. He had kind of a bad relationship with his dad, and his dad comes back into town at one point in the story, which becomes a conflict. He also has dealt with panic attacks in the past. He has PTSD from his childhood. And that's like what a lot of the emphasis of the story is. It's a lot of like these two having a lot of like really intense but like sexy sex, and then them kind of dealing with like the mental health issues. Again, like there wasn't as much relationship development as I really wanted on page. I wanted to see more of what would make them a good like long-term fit. And since they are both dealing with mental health, we do have Walker see Asia have a panic attack at the very beginning of the story, be very accepting of that and not like question her too much about it, which I appreciated. I feel like I needed more of that. I feel like I needed more of them working through their issues together rather than apart. I feel like I wanted more of like date nights. There were only a couple, and I wanted more of a small town feel because this is set almost entirely in a small town, but I feel like I didn't get to know the side characters as well as I wanted to. I feel like it could have been maybe a little bit more charming and a little bit less like sex and anxiety, mental health heavy. Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like those are important things to have in a book. Not the sex, but like the mental health representation. I appreciated it, but I just felt like the true relationship development took a backseat to kind of the heavier topics, and I wanted this to be a little bit more rom-com. Those are the 16 books that I've not talked to you about before that I kind of quickly sped through because this reading wrap-up was very intense. And I will leave links to some of the videos where I talked about some of my favorite romances of this month if you would like to see any of those. If you're like, you just bitched for a whole hour and I want to see what books you actually like, I'll leave links to those videos in the description if I can remember. And again, if you want to see like my in-depth thoughts on some steamier romances, those will be over on my Patreon. That's kind of it. I was trying to think of like any updates that I have for you going into the month of August ahead, you know, because I like to do those at the end of my wrap-ups, and honestly there's not a whole lot that I feel like is coming up in August that is that different from the month of July. I'm hoping to read honestly a similar amount in the month of August that I did this month. You're gonna be seeing videos from me pretty much 3 times a week for the foreseeable future. I have an exciting like kind of project video I think coming that I'm kind of proud of, or that I will be proud of when I film it. And I do have some like I read vibes and some weekly reading vlogs, and you know, the usual fare here on my channel. So I guess like this update was basically telling you that there's gonna be more of the same, and I hope you're looking forward to it. But thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you. I just realized 5 seconds ago too that the day that you're watching this will be my 4-year anniversary here on YouTube, and honestly just wild to me that I've been making videos for that long. It doesn't feel like it to me. It feels like literally just yesterday that I started sitting in front of my camera and talking to myself and you about books. I just want to take the opportunity, I guess, to say thank you for sticking around if you've been here this entire time, or if you've joined later. Like, thank you for watching my videos, thank you for supporting me, thank you for commenting and talking books with me. I would not picture my life any differently, and it is also so wild to me that this is my life, that this is something that I do with my time. If you would have asked me like in college or like, I don't know, 5 years ago, hey, do you think you're gonna have a YouTube channel and like talk to people about books, I would not have believed you. And it's wild to me that I'm doing this, and I'm so happy that I am. I love doing this. I cannot imagine my life without all of you and without you know, making stuff. I didn't really have anything planned when I brought that up, but I really do appreciate you, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you. I love you so much. I have good things coming for the rest of the year. I hope you're excited about it. I have all of my content planned for the rest of the year. I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.